Hi and welcome to Section 2, Microsoft Access Asking Questions Using Queries. Building your first query and setting criteria. In this video I will be covering the following. Introduce you to the QBE Query by Example Grid interface. Cover some of the components and all the three different view modes for a query. Learn how to set the elements and run queries. Learn about and set sorting and criteria for a query. And cover some of the tips on checking your results to ensure your data is accurate. Let's get started. I'm going to start by showing you where you create a query in Access, as well as introduce you to the components, including some of the terminology used. From the ribbon bar, you'll need to locate the Create tab and look for the Query section where the Query Design icon can be found. Clicking on this icon will load a blank new query, as well as show the pop-up dialog box to select one or more tables or even queries. You can select one or more tables or queries and then click on the Add button provided to append your selection. You can also close this Show Table dialog box with no selection, leaving you to manually build your queries. As a result, you are now looking at what is known as the Query by Example Query Grid, or QBE Grid for short. Notice the source file for your chosen table or query will appear in the upper half of the Windows pane view. The lower half of the pane will be where we need to spend most of our time, choosing fields, set the sorting, add criteria, and set other attributes for the query. In addition, you'll need to switch between view modes for a query to test and view the results, and this is where you can find four options. The datasheet view, like a table, will preview and run your query. At any time, you can switch back to the Design View mode and continue refining the fields and criteria. The SQL View mode is a special view mode showing the markup code language that is generated via the Design View of your query. And this will be used for more advanced query designing, where the Design View mode is not available. And finally, you may have noticed a red exclamation icon, which in fact acts the same as the Datasheet View icon, and will only differ when special types of queries are executed, which I will be covering later in other videos. So, let's create a new query now using the Customers table. Using the Design View icon, I choose the Customers table and then close the dialog box once it's been added. Notice you can move and resize the table like so, and also move the split bar up and down. You may have also noticed some of the primary or secondary keys that have been set for certain fields listed in the Customers table too. If you wanted to remove this table, you could click anywhere in the table and press the Delete key from the keyboard. To add another table or query, you need to open the Show Table dialog box using this icon here. Simply select the table or query and then click on the Add button, or better still, just double-click on the item which will add it to the query. This is known as a select query, which is the most common type of query, and can be confirmed by looking at the icon from the ribbon bar here. Add one or more fields, you can use various methods. Quickly double-click on a field to append that field to the next available column in the grid below. Or select multiple fields by first holding down the Control key from your keyboard and then single-click each item. Releasing that Control key, you can then drag and drop anywhere on the selection into the column grid below. Alternatively, you could just choose the existing fields from the drop-down list here in the query grid itself and add the fields in the order you want them to appear. If you wish to delete or remove a field, you simply select the column head, the heading itself for a field, and press the Delete key from the keyboard. If you prefer, you can use the Delete Columns icon on the ribbon bar, but your cursor needs to also be correctly positioned first. Selecting more than one column will delete the entire selected fields. You can also switch fields and their order around by going back to the drop-down boxes here and choose the field to replace. Finally, you can also drag and drop selected columns left and right, which is another way to reposition your fields. So I'm going to add the following fields from the Customers table: Customer ID, Company Name, Contact Name, City, Country, Phone, and Email. Next, I'm going to run the query by clicking the Datasheet View icon. Just so I can verify, I can see the selected fields and all the records. Back to the design view, and note there's no saving required at this early stage. I could have used the Run icon here, which has the same function and outcome for a select query. Take note that when viewing and running the query, you should observe the total number of records found. This is called the record set, which has no added sorting or criteria yet, and therefore shows all the records from the customers table. Back to design view then. You can now add some sorting to your query. Though you can sort directly on a table, this is not the best practice, as this will be disorganized when adding any new records. However, with queries, because they are called and run when needed, it recompiles and reorganizes the records in the order you designed it. Locate which fields to sort by, and from the drop-down box in the grid's sort row, choose the sort direction. So I'm going to sort by company name in ascending order. You can choose from as many fields to sort on as required, but do note the order of sorting in a grid, which is from a left to right arrangement that determines the sort order between fields. For example, adding another sort to the city field will mean that the company name field will sort first, followed by the city field. If the same company name appeared more than once for a different city, you would then see the city field being sorted as the second key field. Now run the query and see the record set result. To change the order, making the city field sort first will need to either reposition it somewhere before the company name field, like so. Or better still, consider this technique instead, so we can maintain a logical arrangement and layout of the fields, but trick the system to change in the order as required. Add the city field in again, but somewhere before the company name field. Remove the sorting applied to the city field by setting it as not sorted. Now, adding the ascending option to the newly added city field instead, and at the same time, untick the show box here, so it's hidden from view in running your query. You don't need to see this field again. Now run your query and see the result. Back in design view once again, adding some criteria now will start to apply the filtering for your query. If I wanted to find only customers based in London, for example, then locate the field, in this case the city field, and in its criteria row, the first row, add the city to match, for example London. Notice it is not case sensitive, it just needs to match. Also notice when I move the cursor to anywhere else, the QBE grid will attempt to validate by adding certain markings based on what is typed, which determines the field's data type that's set to. In this example, double quotes are wrapped around my typed value, meaning it's a text data type. Now run the query again and you'll see the record set for just London-based customers. If I wanted to find records for all the UK-only customers instead, I would need to remove the criteria from the city field. However, do note the country field is actually a number, the value of 1 representing the UK, which is from another table called countries. And we'll need to use that value in the criteria for a country instead. So, removing the previous criteria for the city field and adding the value of 1 to the country field, you'll see there are no markings this time, as this is a numbered data type and doesn't have any markings. To save a query, either close it and a prompt will appear, or click the Save icon here. Checking your results as you build a query is important, as the system will not tell you anything until the query is running, which may be too late. It becomes more difficult to work out where it has gone wrong and which element of the query was the issue. So here are some pointers to help build a query. Create a query, add all the fields and run the query first to check you can see the data. Make a note of the total record set, that's the number of records found, so you can compare and see the number change. Add any sorting to your query if required, and run the query again to confirm it's correctly organized. Add the first criteria for your query and run to check to see the record set. It should reduce as it's been filtered. Add the next criteria, repeat the run and record set result as many times as required. Each time it should reduce, but sometimes it may not, hence the checking here one at a time. Save your query, and the above will allow to pinpoint where and when record sets become incorrect. To summarize then, you now know about the QBE Query by Example Grid interface, have covered some of the components and view modes of a query, created a select query including how to sort and set criteria, and covered some of the tips on how to check your results to ensure your data is accurate.